SCHD is my favorite dividend ETF due to its historical performance, its dividend growth each and every year, and its strict selection as to how it brings new companies into the fund. That last one, though, does leave it open to the possibility that the fund actually doesn't bring in the best companies, because some of those companies just may miss one or two benchmarks that SCHD requires in order to bring it into the ETF. For that reason, it may be smart for investors to include at least one other dividend ETF in their dividend investing portfolio. So I researched over 30 of the top ones out there, and I came up with these 7. My name is Nolan Govea. My students call me Professor G, and I made this channel to make investing simplified. Like I said before, there's so many different dividend ETFs out there for you to pick from, but these are my favorites. And if you have one or two that you really like in your portfolio, it'd be super cool if you go ahead and comment that down below so that anyone watching this can have a whole library to research. The first one on this list is pretty much the top dog other than SCHD, and some people even say this is the top dividend ETF overall, even over SCHD. And this one comes from Vanguard, which is the Vanguard High Dividend Yield ETF VYM. VYM seeks to match the performance of the FTSE High Dividend Yield Index, which consists of common stocks of companies that pay dividends that are generally higher than average. This one has a super low expense ratio of 0.06%. Its current price is $102.35. The dividend yield is 3.11%. The number of stocks within VYM is 466. And that's 4 times more than SCHD because SCHD only has 104. The PE ratio for VYM is 14.4, which is very low and solid. The top 10 companies within this fund are extremely stable, with ones like Exxon, Johnson & Johnson, JP Morgan, Procter & Gamble, and Pepsi. The dividend growth over the past 10 years is nice and stable. Year to date, we're down 5.22%, so it's on sale a bit from last year. As you can see here, over the last year, VYM has outperformed SCHD. The fact that VYM has 4 times as many companies within the fund helps it be a bit more diversified, and that helps when we're going through a bit of a market downturn, which is why VYM is down less than SCHD this year. This is an overall great dividend fund. The next one on my list pairs perfectly with any US-based dividend ETF, but specifically with SCHD. This one is the best international dividend fund that I found, and it's called the Schwab International Dividend Equity ETF, SCHY. And it invests in non-US high dividend yielding stocks with a record of paying dividends for at least 10 consecutive years. It also screens for financial strength and screens for lower volatility. The dividend yield is super solid, over 4.5%. The expense ratio is 0.14%. The number of stocks in SCHY is 134. The PE ratio is nice and low at 10.75. The top 10 companies come from top solid companies around the world, like Nintendo, Unilever, and KDDI. The countries represented are that from the UK, Australia, Japan, Switzerland, Canada, and more. The current price of SCHY is $23.60, and year to date it's actually up 4.8%. This fund is the ultimate fund to add because it literally has a 0% overlap to SCHD, which means that you're diversifying incredibly well by holding both of these. The con of this fund is that it's strictly international, and the returns on international funds have not been that great. This fund has only been around for about a year, and since inception, it's only returned about 1.47%. Again, one would pick this fund to diversify and add to SCHD, but not make it your only dividend ETF. Now, like I said at the beginning of this video, there is so many different dividend ETFs, and there's sometimes just so hard for you to figure out which one's best and which one should you stick with, especially with all the noise out there. I'd highly recommend that you join our Patreon group because we go over this every 2 weeks in our live Zoom meetings, or you can always DM me at any time and just talk with me one-on-one so that we can figure out what's going to be best for your portfolio and what might be best overall as an investor. It's only $20 per month, and the peace of mind that you're going to get from this and being around like-minded investors is going to be so worth it. Click the link down in the description and come join the fun as soon as possible, but for now, let's get back to these dividend ETFs. The next one is very cool because it basically takes the best dividend stocks within the S&P 500 and made a solid dividend ETF out of it. It's also one of the highest dividend yield ETFs out there. SPYD tracks the S&P 500 high dividend index and holds stakes in 80 high-yielding S&P 500 companies. SCHY ETF is a good pick for bear market conditions, but it doesn't offer hefty returns in the long term. This is due to SPYD's portfolio concentration, which is ideal during bear market scenarios, but not during bullish markets. The current price is $35.22. It has an expense ratio of 0.07. The dividend yield is super high, like I said before, 4.84%. The number of stocks within the ETF is 79, and the PE ratio is nice and low at 11.43. Solid companies within the top 10 like Darden Restaurants, Omnicom, Pinnacle West, and Altria. The 5-year performance is right around 6% appreciation on average. The dividend growth has not been amazing, but it has kept a pretty consistent dividend for 5 years. Now, year to date, it is down 10.5%, which is actually pretty bad, and that's probably because the fund is very concentrated with real estate and financials at the top, which normally are pretty stable, but lately have been getting crushed. The SPYD ETF provides almost a 5% dividend yield, but it hasn't been able to translate this yield into substantial long-term returns because of low price appreciation and lack of dividend growth potential. I still do like that it's taking companies from the S&P 500, which does take down your risk just a little bit, knowing that these companies are nice and safe and strong, solid companies. This next one should definitely be on everyone's list, and it's one that I'm becoming more and more fond of the more that I research. This next fund invests in blue chip companies that have a long history of investing in companies that have good, solid dividend growth. And specifically, it's looking at companies that have grown their dividends for 10 consecutive years. This one is the Vanguard Dividend Appreciation ETF, VIG. The expense ratio here is 0.06%. The dividend yield is 1.84%, but year to date, it's actually one of the only dividend ETFs that's up. And it's up 1.77% with a current price of $154.46. This one is so attractive because of its appreciation. It has a 10-year average yearly appreciation of over 11% per year. And this is because it's a little different than most dividend ETFs, because most dividend ETFs are just trying to find companies with the highest paying dividend, whereas this one is picking great companies even if the dividend's a little bit lower, knowing that the company's share price is going to appreciate along with the dividend. Looking at their top 10 holdings, we see companies like Apple, Microsoft, Exxon, United Health, and JP Morgan. All solid companies. The number of stocks in VIG is 314, and it's a blended ETF with both growth and value companies. This one is not overly weighted in financials and is a little more balanced, but has massive information technology exposure, which is where its emphasis on growth comes from. The dividend growth over the last 10 years is amazing as well, so it's hard not to like this ETF. This one is definitely one of my favorites on this list, especially if you want to keep your ETF count low and get the most bang for your buck. This next one is much different in a couple of very important ways, which leads to its over 5% dividend yield and its dividend that's paid out every single month. This one is the Amplify CWP Enhanced Dividend Income ETF, Divo, or DIVO. Divo is an actively managed ETF of high-quality large-cap companies with a history of dividend growth, along with a tactical covered call strategy on individual stocks. Divo is strategically designed to offer high levels of total return on a risk-adjusted basis. So Divo is actively managed by actual managers, and so it doesn't follow an index. The fund managers can identify and capitalize on opportunities as they see fit in real time. Because of that active management, it does have a higher expense ratio of 0.55%. The dividend yield, though, is 5.25%, and it's paid every month. The number of stocks in this is actually quite low at only 22. But this fund does have a Morningstar rating of 5 stars, which is the absolute highest. The top 10 companies in Divo are ones like Microsoft, Visa, United Health, Procter & Gamble, McDonald's, and Chevron. Its performance since inception has been almost 12% average appreciation yearly. The current price is $34.79, and year to date it's down 2.47%. The thing that I like about this one over some of the other covered call strategy type ETFs like JEPI or XYLD or QYLD is that Divo writes covered call options on individual and specific stocks tactically. This is unlike some of those other ones that I mentioned before, because those ones have something like a covered call strategy that happens every month systematically, rather than picking something and seeing something in real time and going after it right then and there. This is human brains watching and capturing something in real time, and this should produce much more upside. This next one reminds me a lot of VIG from before, but has a couple of differences that might actually make this a better buy now over VIG because it's actually down and on sale. This one is the iShares Core Dividend Growth ETF, DGRO, and just like the ticker symbol name suggests, the fund employs a screening strategy to place emphasis on stocks that grow their dividends at high rates each year. For longer-term investors, this may be an amazing strategy, as when you buy into the fund, you now have an asset that not only should increase in share price, but also increase in dividend yield every year as well, which is not typical to have both in most ETFs. The expense ratio is 0.08%. It has a dividend yield of almost 2.5%. The number of stocks within DGRO is 445, so it's very diversified. The PE ratio is 16.63. In the top 10 holdings, we're looking at a lot of what we've seen before, but Microsoft, Apple, AbbVie, Broadcom, and Pfizer are the ones I like to see most here. As far as performance, we're looking at 10.7% average appreciation. The dividend growth has been super solid each year, and right now we're looking at a current price of $49.47, and year to date it's down 0.78%. Like I said before, this one might be a sneaky strategy to get in and get involved within an ETF where the dividends are a little bit lower, but the whole idea here is to buy in when everything's cheaper and when the dividends are a little bit lower, knowing that the whole goal here is for them to keep growing each year. So in 10 years, hopefully you're gonna have something that has a much higher share price, but also much, much higher dividends that you only bought in way cheaper. Then eventually you can cash in on that sweet, sweet passive income. So this next one is one that's become super popular, and I've been getting a lot of questions about it, and so I had to do my research to see if it was worth the hype, and I was shocked by these numbers. It has a 5-year average appreciation of 13.71%, and over the past 5 years, it's crushed the S&P 500 with a total return over 79%, where the S&P 500 had 56%. And this one is called OMFL, or the Invesco Russell 1000 Dynamic Multi-Factor ETF. This benchmark weights large caps in the Russell 1000 according to economic cycles and market conditions. These can reflect expansion, slowdown, contraction, or recovery according to Invesco. The expense ratio for OMFL is 0.29%. It has a dividend yield of 1.62%. The number of stocks within OMFL is 309. The PE ratio is 18.62. Some of the top 10 holdings within this ETF are Apple, Microsoft, Berkshire Hathaway, which I like to see, Eli Lilly, and Walmart. Like I said, the performance has been insane at an average appreciation of 13.71% per year for the past 5 years. The current price is $46.73, and it's on fire this year at up almost 9% year to date. Any one of these could be paired with SCHD for ultimate passive income, or paired with the S&P 500, and in this video, I give my prediction where I think the price is going to be by 2030. Watch this video now.